Hi guys, good evening.
Hi, Andrea.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, no problem.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you.
I cannot hear you. Hello?
Hello, Andrea. I can hear you. Hello, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
So I know you guys can hear me, but for some reason I can't hear you all. Can anybody please speak?
Hello, Andrea. I can hear you.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Now I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, guys. So, please don't forget to turn your cameras on. And today, this week, we're going to be working on a new section. We finished working on the reading section last week. So today we'll be looking at the listening section, right? So let's take a look at the listening section. Now the listening section is just as the other sections, over 30 points. Remember that the listening is the second section that you have. First, you have the reading, then you get listening. And well, in the listening section, of course, you're going to have to listen to certain audio files and then answer questions about those files that you listen to. Now, here is the structure. This is the format of the current listening section. So the number of questions that you will have in the listening section depends on the number of questions that you had in the reading. Okay, why is that? The thing is, the TOEFL, the ETS, always gives you guys one extra task. Okay, so one extra unscored task. And this extra task could go either in the reading or in the listening section. So I don't know if you guys remember, but in the reading we said that you could technically have 3 or 4 passages, right, in the reading section. It wasn't an exact number. You could have 3 or you could have 4, depending on whether you have the extra task in the reading or not. So if you guys had 4 passages in the reading, so if you had the long reading version, then your listening will be shorter because it's going to be balanced in that way. So if you have 4 passages in the reading, that means that here in the listening section, you will only have 5 tasks. Okay. However, if in the reading section you have 3 passages, that means that in the listening you have a little bit more. You'll have 7 tasks total. You'll have 2 extra ones. Okay, so both reading and listening are linked. Now, what are these tasks? What will you have to do here in the listening section? There are 2 different types of things that you'll have to hear, 2 different types of content. The first one is conversations. So you will be hearing casual conversations and answering questions about them. And the second type is lectures, academic lectures. All right. Now, depending on the number of tasks that you have, you can have 2 or 3 conversations and 3 or 4 lectures, depending on how many tasks you get, as you can see on my screen. Now, obviously, the time will be according to the number of questions you get as well. So if you have 5 tasks, you'll get 41 minutes. But if you have 7, you'll get 57 minutes. Okay. So it's almost like 8 minutes per question or per task, not per question. But again, it's the same as in the reading. You do not have one a separate timer per passage. In this case, you don't have a separate timer per conversation or per lecture. So you will get one timer for the entire listening section. And it is completely up to you how you manage your time. Okay, so you are the ones that are going to determine how much time you use per task. And well, that's going to be up to you, right? But ideally, you should be spending around 7, 6, 8 minutes per task, right? Per conversation or per lecture. Is that okay? Do you guys have any questions so far in terms of the format? Nope. Okay, so again, we're going to divide our classes into 2 different categories. Lectures and conversations, because those are the 2 types of passages that you'll have here. Now, today and tomorrow, we'll be working on conversations. And on Thursday and Friday, we'll be doing lectures. Okay, so today, let's start with conversations. Remember that you can have 2 or 3, depending on the number of tasks you get. These conversations are not long. They are about, at most, 3 minutes long. So they could be 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm sorry, not at most, about 3 minutes long, because yeah, now I'm remembering, and sometimes you have longer conversations. And you get 5 questions per conversation. And in the conversations, you will only hear 2 people speak, so 2 speakers. Okay, so again, you can have 2 or 3 conversations. They are about 3 minutes long, could be more, could be less. You get 5 questions per conversation, and you will be hearing 2 people speak. Do you guys have any questions now? All right. Now the question is, what are these conversations going to be about? How will they be? This is really important for you guys to understand. Now, these conversations will always 100% of the time be held between a student from an ex-university. We don't care about which university, but an American university, by the way. So in the conversation, the student will participate, and this student will be talking to a university worker. That means somebody that works in that university, right? Or that works for that university. So this campus worker, university worker, could really be anybody that works in the university, anyone that you guys can think of. So for example, this is probably the most common type, where you have a student who is talking to his or her professor, right? So in that case, you have the student and you have the professor, and they're talking about something. Remember that the professor is somebody that works in the university, right? You could also have, for example, a student and a librarian, right? A librarian is somebody that also works in the university. What else? What else do you guys think we could have? Professors, librarians, who else? Who else works inside a university? Nobody? You cannot think of anybody else? Many people, right, who work in... I'm sorry, Lorena?
A classmate.
Okay, but does a classmate work for the university? Work in the university? If this student would be like talking to a classmate, that means that the other student, the classmate, is also another student, right? So it would be a student. But we need somebody that works in the university, not that studies in the university. So who else? Maybe an academic advisor. I don't know, maybe somebody, maybe the accommodation officer. I don't know, any officer that works in the university, right? Maybe somebody from the international's office, maybe the person that's in charge of clubs and stuff. So anybody that works inside a university. Now, what are they gonna be talking about? Like, what would they talk about? It's always the same. The student, this student here is the one that is approaching the campus work, all right? So the student went to see this person for a reason. Now, why would the student go to see somebody like somebody that works in campus? Because he or she has a problem, or he or she wants something, right? That is the thing. So the student has a problem. The student has a request. The student needs something. Okay. For example, if it was a conversation between a professor and a student, then it's probably related uh, to something related to the academic part of university, right? Maybe the student, I don't know, maybe the student got a B or got an F on something, so he has or she has a low grade, and the student goes and to see the professor to ask about that grade, right? Maybe that's the student's problem. Maybe the student needs help with an assignment. Maybe the student doesn't really know how to do something, so they're gonna go see the professor to talk about it. If the student is talking to a librarian, then maybe the student cannot find a book, right? So that will be the problem. Or maybe the student is requesting something, right? Maybe the student wants to apply for any type of program or wants to borrow a book. I don't know. But the student always wants something, okay? And this person here that works in university is supposed to be helpful and guide the student, and give the student suggestions and help the student in any way possible. Okay. Do you guys have any questions about this? Yes. So we're not going to do the same as we did for the reading section. We won't be looking at the types of questions one by one and looking for strategies to answer them each, because I don't think it's necessary to do that here in the listening section. You will see that it's not. As an overview, I want you guys to see the types of questions. You have the main idea type of question, which is usually the one that comes at first, the first question that you get, which is going to ask you about the topic of the conversation in general. So it could ask you about the problem that the student has, or it could ask you about the main topic of the conversation, maybe. So that's the main idea, right? The one that comes at first that asks you for general information. Sometimes you have function and purpose, which is basically one that asks you about the meaning of something, the meaning behind the words. So they will ask you about the reason why somebody said something. So why does the student say this? Why does the professor say that? And you will have to listen again when you have this type of questions, that specific part of the conversation. Organization is not something that you will see in the conversation, so we don't have to see that. Attitude questions are not that frequent, but they ask you about attitudes and about feelings and about tones. So they could be phrased like, what is the student's attitude or opinion towards this or about this sex problem? Or how does the professor feel about this? Right? So they ask you about the things that you cannot hear, but you can infer, right? Because of the way that they are speaking. Inference is something that you do not have here, so don't forget about that. And finally, you have detailed questions, which, as the name suggests, will be asking about the specific details in the conversation. So they will ask you for names and dates and numbers and anything that is detailed, right? So maybe they'll ask you about like, what time should the student come back? What was the name of the professor? What was the professor's suggestions? What can the student do for this or that, right? They ask you for specific details that you have to remember or that you are supposed to have in your notes. Those are the types, all right? Now, that's it. We don't really have to see one by one because you will see that you don't need to. To be honest with you guys, I'd say that conversations is probably, or at least for me personally, and I guess for many students, it's one, if not the easiest part of the entire test. You will see. So you'll know what I mean when we get to some exercises. Okay. But there's not much theory to cover here. I'm going to be giving you guys some tips as we go and as we practice. I wanted to go over some of them. Let's see. So I guess my main tip is going to be always be logical. Always make sure that the answer that you're choosing makes sense. And especially if you guys don't know the answer to a question, like there's a high chance that you guys can answer some of the questions without even like knowing the real answer, just by being logical about it. So some tips I can give you. For example, the first one that applies to the main idea type of question. When you guys get that type of question, the main idea one, and for example, they will ask you, why does the student go to see the professor? You guys have to remember the university worker's role, right? So for example, in this case, we have options A, to talk about her paper and farming practices. B, to ask if she can study abroad in Guatemala. C, to discuss her research in agricultural practices and environmental conditions. D, to see if she can become a Spanish major. So as you can see, in the options, we have different options, right? They are not related. Which ones do you think do not make sense or are less likely to be the ones from A to B, from A to D, sorry? So for example, if you look at option B that says to ask if she can study abroad, like, is it logical that the student goes to see the professor to ask that? Probably not, right? I mean, it is more likely that the student goes to see somebody else to discuss this option, right? The student is probably not going to go see the professor to talk about that. Maybe they do talk about something related, but if you think about it, the student won't initially go to see the professor for that reason, right? So if the student wants to see if they can study abroad, they'll probably go to somebody else, right? They'll probably head to the international office, or they'll talk to somebody whose job is related to this. Same thing as for D, right? To see if she can become a Spanish major. Probably this student won't go see the professor about this. Maybe she'll visit the academic, discuss her options of changing her major. So in this question, for example, options A and C, I'm not saying that they are correct, but they are more likely to be correct than options B and D, right? Because they make more sense when putting them into context. Now, another thing you guys gotta consider, especially when you have these attitude types of question, is that like this is gonna be a portrait of the ideal way things should be, right? So you could eliminate some options that make anybody seem rude, right? Or seem like a little bit off. So in this case, for instance, it says, what attitude does the professor have? Usually the negative attitudes are not that likely to be the ones. Like, he is bored? I don't think so, right? So it's more likely that he's impressed, that he's concerned. I don't know if he's eager to write something, but uh, options A and B are more likely to be the ones, right? Because he's bored, he's upset, he's angry, he's mad, he's disappointed maybe. But usually you won't have many negative attitudes. And finally, remember that, like, as I said before, with these conversations, they will obviously be showing the ideal way of things. So you usually won't have things like that are not fair. So for example, the professor is almost never going to give the students extra time or extra credit or any type of cheating. So it's always going to be something fair for everybody, for the professor, the students, anybody, everybody. Okay? And the campus workers are also supposed to be helpful. Okay? So that's it. I know that I've been speaking for too long, but I think that's everything you guys really have to know. And everything else, we're going to see it as we go, as we practice with real TOEFL questions. Okay, do you guys have any questions so far before we start practicing? No questions? Okay. So we're going to be working with different sources. But maybe the right way to start is by looking at the sample or like the real test that we have from the ETS. Right, so we're gonna start by using, we'll always start by using something that's official. So see. Okay, there was one. I don't know where it is. Okay, here we are. Please be ready to take notes because you are gonna have to take notes. Okay? So get a piece of paper and a pen. By the way, one suggestion on how to take notes. Let me show you. So what I do for the conversations, what I suggest students to do as well, is first thing, you have to remember that you won't be using much space for your notes in the conversations. If you guys, okay, here's one tip before I go into the other one. The first tip is gonna be practice taking notes the way that you will in the actual TOEFL test, okay? What does that mean? If you guys are gonna take the test in a test center, then you will be taking notes on paper, right? On actual paper with a pen. So practice that way, right? You get yourself like 4 pieces of paper, 5 they usually give you, a pen, and practice using pen and paper. Now, if you don't type your notes, right? That's something that I've seen some students do. but you have to be realistic, and in the real test, you won't be typing your notes. So it is a different experience, typing versus handwriting. So make sure that you practice realistically. Second, if you guys are going to take the test at home, then the experience is different because you won't be taking notes on real paper, but instead you have to have either a whiteboard or you can use a transparent sheet with a piece of paper inside and an erasable marker, right? So you'll be writing down your notes with this erasable marker and then erasing your notes and writing them again. That's what you have to do. And it's different than taking notes on paper, right? So in order for you to get used to the experience and for that not to be an obstacle when you're taking the test, you got to start practicing now, taking notes in the way that you will in the real test, right? Either whether it is that you take it at home or in the test center, but practice realistically. All right, so if you guys are taking, especially if you're taking the test at home, then get yourself that whiteboard or that transparent sheet and try to practice with a mark, okay, so that you see how it goes. Do you have any questions about that? Okay, second thing, how to take notes for these conversations. Let's say this is your piece of paper. You don't use much space. Conversations won't require much space for your notes. When I took the test, what I did was I used only one piece of paper for all conversations. So, and another, well, I used more for the lectures, okay? But I had like my piece of paper for my notes from the conversations. Everything was organized. And what else? When you're working on a conversation, so let's say this is conversation number 1. Try to divide the space into 2. So maybe you can draw a line or something, I don't know. But the thing is, you'll have one side for the student and the other side for the work. Okay? It could be left or right, it doesn't matter. The thing is that you have your notes organized. So you're gonna go back and forth, left to right, every time that they are saying something, that they're speaking, and you consider that is important, right? So for example, the student has the problem that he or she needs help with an assignment. So I'm gonna write down help assignment, I don't know. And then I'll write what the professor says about that, right? So maybe the professors may be a little bit, I don't know, a little bit surprised that the student needs help. So I'm gonna draw that sticker. And I'm gonna say why, right? Maybe because the professor thinks that it's an easy assignment. And then I'll go back to what the student says. So the student is like, well, I'm having trouble with this specific part of the assignment, doing the research about this specific thing. And then, I don't know, maybe the professor has some suggestions. So suggestion 1, you can do this. Suggestion 2, you can do that. Suggestion 3, right? And then I'll write down how the student feels about that. Okay, so you're gonna go back and forth. This is helpful, especially when you have questions that are not specific details, but instead they're asking about like attitudes and interpreting what they said. So yeah, that's one way you can take your notes. Okay, you go back and forth, student and work. Is that okay? Do you guys have questions? All right, so let's see.
Listening section directions. The listening section of the TOEFL IB.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a professor.
Hi, Professor Mason. Do you have a minute?
Yes, of course, Eric. I think there was something I wanted to talk to you about, too.
Probably my late essay.
Ah, that must have been it. I thought maybe I'd lost it.
No, I'm sorry. Actually, it was my computer that lost it, the first draft of it. And, well, anyway, I finally put it in your mailbox yesterday.
Oh, and I haven't checked the mailbox yet today. Well, I'm glad it's there. I'll read it this weekend.
Well, sorry again. Say, I can send it to you by email, too, if you like.
Great. I'll be interested to see how it all came out.
Right. Now, I just overheard some graduate students talking. Something about a party for Dean Adams?
Retirement party, yes. All students are invited. Wasn't there a notice on the anthropology department's bulletin board?
I don't know, but I wanted to offer to help out with it. You know, whatever you need. Dean Adams, well, I took a few anthropology classes with her, and they were great, inspiring. And well, I just wanted to pitch in.
Oh, that's very thoughtful of you, Eric, but it'll be pretty low-key. Nothing flashy. That's not her style.
So there's nothing?
No, we'll have coffee and cookies. Maybe a cake, but actually a couple of the administrative assistants are working on that. You could ask them, but I think they've got it covered.
Okay.
Actually, oh, no, never mind.
What is it?
Well, it's nothing to do with the party, and I'm sure there are more exciting ways you could spend your time, but we do need some help with something. We're compiling a database of articles the anthropology faculty has published. There's not much glory in it, but we're looking for someone with some knowledge of anthropology who can enter the articles. I hesitate to mention it, but I don't suppose this is something you would...
No, that sounds kind of cool. I'd like to see what they're writing about.
Wonderful. And there are also some unpublished studies. Did you know Dean Adams did a lot of field research in Indonesia? Most of it hasn't been published yet.
No, like what?
Well, she's really versatile. She just spent several months studying social interactions in Indonesia, and she's been influential in ethnology. Oh, and she's also done work in South America that's closer to biology, especially with speciation.
Not to seem uninformed.
Well, how species form. You know, how two distinct species form from one, like when populations of the same species are isolated from each other and then develop in two different directions and end up as two distinct species.
Interesting.
Yes. And while she was there in South America, she collected a lot of linguistic information and songs. Really fascinating.
Well, I hate to see her leave.
Don't worry, she'll still be around. She's got lots of projects that she's still in the middle of.
Why does the man go to see the professor?
Okay, guys. So, what was I gonna say? Okay, before we start answering the questions, as you might have noticed, it was a little bit long, but what did you guys think about that, about the conversation? Was it easy to understand? Was it easy to follow? Were they speaking at a good speed? Was the vocabulary good? Were you able to take notes? What did you think about it, Avril? You there? Okay, guys, well, in any case, let's start looking at the questions then. First question says, I am sorry, Pansy, were you about to say something?
I think the last one, the letter D can be. I don't know. I'm not sure.
All right. Yes, do you guys agree?
The last one, I think.
Okay, does everyone agree? Is it the last one? Okay. So I personally agree. I would say it's the last one. And I think this is a great way, a great example of something that I wanted to say. First thing, this is the main idea type of question, right? The one that comes at first. Now, something interesting is that there are two types of main idea type of question. So one is where they ask you about the intention, the initial intention, the initial reason why the student went to see this person. All right, that is usually the most common, where they ask you about the reason why the student went to see this person. And the other one is the one where they ask you to summarize the conversation. So they ask you what were they mainly talking about? Do you see that it's different? It would be different if I ask, So what do they mainly talk about versus why did the student go to see this person? So one is asking for the initial reason, the initial intention, and the other one is asking you to summarize everything. You guys have to be able to differentiate both of them and understand that when they're asking you for the intention, the reason why the student went to see this person, you will find the answer in the first 15 seconds of the conversation, probably, right? Not always, but you have to be able to notice what the student's intention was, which is different than the whole conversation. Okay, now in this case, for instance, like they did discuss Dean Adams' current research, right? They did talk about this, that is true. But was that the reason why he went to see the professor? Another thing, he also, I think, handed in a late assignment as well, right? Or they talked about a late assignment. But was that really the reason why he went to see the professor? No, right? And these are the traps that they're gonna have in the questions. They will mention things as options that were talked about, that were discussed, that were in the conversation for sure, but that are not the intention, the initial reason, right? Now, the reason why the student went to see the professor is because he wanted to volunteer to help this organize this party, right? This retirement party. So that's correct. Option D is the right one. Is this okay? Do you guys have any questions about this one? Okay, next.
How did the man learn about Dean Adams's retirement?
What do you guys think? So, what do you think? How did the student learn about Dean Adams' retirement? Alexandra, what do you think?
He heard other students discussing.
Okay. Yeah. You're not sure or you're sure?
No, I'm not sure, but I think I might, but I'm not sure about it.
Okay, good. So I think that's true. I guess, yeah, he did hear from other students. Now, this is just a detailed question, right? Look at how detailed it is. They're asking, remember, it's the same as in the reading questions, right? They'll ask you what, when, why, how, where, I don't know, what time, what date, who, what was the name of this person. So they ask you about details. How did the man learn about Dean Adams' retirement? Now, honestly, this is interesting because, and I'm speaking only about the conversations. I've had some students, and I've tried it myself as well, that were even better that could answer the questions well without even taking notes, because you don't have these detailed questions won't ask you for so detailed things, right? They won't ask you for one date, like month, date, and year. Probably not, right? They'll ask you about these things. So you have to try different strategies. So I would totally recommend that you try to do one practice set where you take full notes, right? Maybe you focus more on taking notes than you do on listening. You do another one where you try to balance it and you only take notes of the most important details. And you can do one where you don't take any notes, and see which one works better for you because the strategies are different for everybody. So see if you guys are constantly like making mistakes with detailed questions, then maybe you do have to work on your note-taking skills. And if not, if you're okay with like remembering the details, especially for the conversations, it is possible to answer the questions without notes. So just try it. I guess that's gonna be my tip here. There's not much that you can do, it's just a detail. Now, one thing that they do and that it's very common is, for example, if we look at option B is true, right? I don't know if you guys remember, but the professor said that this was posted on a bulletin board in the archaeology department, I think. So this is true, but it's not the answer to the question, right? The question is, how did the man learn about the Adams retirement? That's because he heard it from other students. Although it was posted, he didn't learn it that way, right? So careful not to choose options that are true, but are not directly answering the question. And this is correct. Great. Questions so far? Okay, next one.
Why does the professor refuse the man's offer to help with the party?
Why does the professor refuse the student's offer to help with the party? Two answers. So what do you guys think?
She prefers that he spend his time on another project.
Okay. Do you guys agree?
I think that is the party doesn't require much preparation.
Okay, but we need two answers, right? So what will be the other one? So, I mean, the professor did mention, or like the professor kind of asked the student to work on another project, right? But like she prefers that he spend his time on this project over helping with the retirement party. I don't know about that, right? Like she did ask him to work on this project, but like I don't know, I don't think that the professor prefers that the student spends his time in this project instead of helping with the party, right? Because that's what option B says. And remember, this is not an inference question, right? This is not something like what does the professor want to say, or what does the professor mean? No, this is a detailed question asking you why directly. So it's gotta be in the details. It cannot be something that you are inferring, right? Maybe you can infer that she prefers that he spend his time on another project, right? Because now you're thinking and you're saying, okay, so she asked him to work on something else. So maybe that means that she prefers that he spend his time on another project. But that is an inference, right? That's not what she said. She didn't say, nope, like you don't, or you cannot help with this party because I prefer that you spend your time on this other project. She didn't directly say that, right? You're just drawing that conclusion on your own. But this is not an inference question, this is a detailed question. So in this case, it's gotta be options C and A, because that's what she like explicitly said, right? She said, I mean, you could ask them, but it's something low key, she said, right? It's just coffee and cookies. It's nothing flashy, nothing big. So that means the party does not require much preparation, right? That's what she said. And second, and also there are two people that are already working on it, right? Two people from administration, or I don't know. So she directly said these things, right? When he like he volunteered for helping with this party. Is that okay? Do you guys have questions about this one? All right, let's go to the next one.
Why does the professor talk about speciation?
Okay, now look at this question. This is different, right? It's not like what does the professor say about speciation? It's why does the professor talk about speciation? So you have to know the intentions of the professor. What do you guys think? So what do you guys think? Look at your notes. Maybe you have something there that can help you answer this question. Try to remember too. When does she mention speciation? What were they talking about? What were they saying when she mentioned this? Because it's gotta be related, right? Anyone? Nicolas, are you there? No, you're not. Lorena, what about you? Okay, guys, well, in any case, if you guys remember, when she said this, they were saying that, well, the student was like, I'm really gonna miss Dean Adams, right? I'm gonna miss her. She was such a good professor, and she did a lot of things. And the professor was like, yeah, you're right. I think her work was very versatile, she says, right? So it was very varied. It was very like it had a little bit of everything, right? And that's when they started talking about certain details, right, including speciation. But to describe the main focus of the work she needs help with, not true, right? Because the work that she needs help with consists in him, like, I think he has to put data into the computer, right? He has to do some entries, but that's it. He doesn't have to do anything related to speciation. Now, to tell a man about a new research area in technology, I would totally eliminate this option because it's not related. Like, why would the professor would tell the student about this new research area in ethnology? It has nothing to do with the party. It has nothing to do with the project that she needs help with. And it has nothing to do with Dean Adams, right? So totally unrelated. Now, option C, to explain probably why, right? To explain why Dean Adams chose to work on Indonesia. This is too specific, right? And plus, they didn't say anything about this. So in this case, it's also kind of like a detail. And in this case, it's option D. Okay, this is the only one that you guys haven't gotten right. And finally, next question.
Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
There's not much glory in it, but we're looking for someone with some knowledge of anthropology who can enter the articles. I hesitate to mention it, but I don't suppose this is something you would...
Why does the professor say this?
I hesitate to mention it, but I don't suppose this is something you would...
Oh, why does the professor say that?
To ask the man if he will be willing to work on the project.
Yes, so yeah, she was like politely asking the student if he wanted to work on the project, right? She didn't want to sound too demanding. She didn't want to make the student feel like he's obliged to do the project, but she was kindly asking, right? That's a way of asking something when somebody's like, I don't suppose that you have time. I don't suppose that you want to do this, but would you? So it's like a polite way of asking, right? So she's definitely not doubting the student's qualifications. I think that she actually like knows that the student is qualified because he has knowledge on anthropology. Now, I mean, she totally does not want the man to recommend somebody for the project. She wants the student to do it himself. And she's not apologizing for anything, right? Because apologizing for not being able to offer the project to the man. So she's actually offering the project to the man. So why would she apologize for something that she's not doing? So option B, totally. Do you guys agree? Do you guys have any questions so far? That's it. Those are the 5 questions. We got them all correct, but obviously we had some help. But again, this is just practicing, getting used to the question types. And again, being logical a little bit. Okay? Tomorrow we'll practice, we'll do as many as we have time to, as many conversations as we have time to, and we'll be analyzing other questions as well. Okay, guys, but today the most important thing was that you saw the structure and some question types. Okay, so for example, we had main idea.
Why does the man go to see the professor?
Okay, sorry, we have main idea, the first one. Details, we have 2 details. We had 1 inference with why does the professor say? And that's it, right? So what do you guys think? Do you have any questions about what we did today? Is everything clear? Are you guys ready for practicing tomorrow?
Andrea, can we use this platform to practice?
This is the ATS official website. It's not actually a platform. I can send you guys the link. You do have a lot of practice sets. So yes, you can use it. Any other question? Thank you guys. So in that case, please don't forget today's survey and I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow. Okay, good. Bye, guys. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye, Andrea.